Business Dialogues for Good, a series of inspiring conversations with business leaders dedicated to business for good. In these discussions, we explore successes, challenges, opportunities, and world-changing ideas. Join us, get inspired, and be part of the change.
Welcome to the Business Dialogue for Good Leaders. This video podcast is always a discussion between two business leaders or leaders in general who are doing their business, their work for good. So the world is being helped by their companies, by their organizations, and the world would be a little bit less good off if they would not be existing. This episode will be a discussion about a very important topic, a very important question. How can we share and utilize knowledge between organizations on a massive and global scale? How can we learn from that? And all the elements that go along with that question. And in order to discuss that, we have two phenomenal leaders with great ambitions. One is Professor Annemieke Roobeek from Nyenrode Business University and many other positions. And on the left-hand side, we have Frank van der Ven, who is our host. He hosts this studio for us, but he is also the founder and the CEO of iTeam Global, which is a global company producing equipment for cleaning. Welcome to both of you in this studio.
Thank you. Thank you.
As a start, I would like to begin with you, Annemieke, to tell you a little bit more about yourself. What is the work that you do? What is a little bit of your background?
Yeah, I think the red current in my life is innovation and sustainability. And I think the place where we are today is a perfect combination of it. Because if this company would not innovate, it would not become so sustainable and go over the edge sometimes. But that is the red current, and that brought me quite far. I was the youngest female professor in the Netherlands. When I was 29, I became professor for technology and economy. And at that period in time, technology was not so much on everybody's mind. But for me, technology was a key, not only to look forward to what could come, but also to do better. Because new technologies can become an answer to restrictions of a current business model. So that's what we brought in the academic world.
Okay, thank you. Frank, tell me a little bit about your company.
Yeah, iTeam Global is a development company, mostly with patent ideas, bring them back to products, machinery and tools for the cleaner in mind. So at the end of the day, we want to make the life of the cleaner, let's say, better. We call it in our language, how can we do the things faster? How can it lead to cleaner? How can it be greener? How it can be faster and better for everybody? So that's our mission, let's say, what we execute, and we do that with in mind, let's say, that we think that the cleaner deserves more respect as it mostly gets. And that is, let's say, the real goal we have, to bring that back to them. And we would like to transform from cleaner to hospitality hosts.
Yeah.
But you're both intrinsically driven, huh?
Yeah.
Not extrinsically by law. So, and where does that come from? Why is that?
Well, I come from a very humble background in Amsterdam, in a quarter of the city that was not really the rich part. But my father was very active in the community, and I learned a lot from him. And what he did in the community, you know, being an active person, making sure the money from the municipality went to the good things in the community. I think I learned a lot from that, because that was a leeway for me to do that later on at a bigger scale. But it starts small.
And how is that with you, Frank? Because you have a company, you started this company. Where does your intrinsic drive come from?
Yeah, I think I got it from I would call it self-learning, self-looking around and see, okay, what is going around in the world and what can I do about it, let's say. And then at the end of the day, you get the power to do that by creating something, and then you use that for something else, but was not given to me from my parents, for sure not. Let's say, I'm not saying that I had bad parents. That's not what I'm saying, but they were not in that mindset. I think, let's say, at that time and point. But I always thought, okay, if I bring it to a certain level, I want to use that, let's say, for others also.
It's your ethical behavior, eh?
Yeah.
What you think is right and what you think is wrong.
Yes, and then you start to develop that, and then you can see, let's say, that it works, and then you get, I will call it in my life, you get a smile on the face of somebody else, and that motivates you to keep doing it.
Because that brings me to maybe our first topic. About when we talk about knowledge and information, there is a tremendous amount, Annemieke, I would say, of information, but also misinformation, like a tsunami.
Yes.
Coming all over us, and that is damaging as well. And when we look at the use of information, as you always say, the sharing of knowledge, how do you then look at this tsunami of information? People don't know what is right and what is wrong anymore.
Yeah, because it is about the art of asking the right questions. And when you ask a question, then you do not know everything, because therefore you ask a question. So you must have a mind of an investigator. And I think that very much of what we now call the information of what you can see and find in publicly available sources on the internet is much more consumer information, pre-processed information already. So I always go back to the question, how original is the question? And that's the same with AI. We can do a lot with AI if we have the right prompts. But making the right prompts, so asking the question for the newness is extremely important. And then you can see that AI can help you a little bit to get a taste of it, but it doesn't give you the solution, because therefore we need to be amongst ourselves and to use our creative minds and to have exchanges.
But Annemieke, not everybody is a great question
No,
maker.
That's the most difficult thing also in arts, in science, in technology, and in entrepreneurship. So therefore we have to cherish those who have it.
You know, we always say here, which question you didn't ask, if you would have asked the question, it would change your life.
Yeah, that's also something, yeah.
So at the end, that's what it is. So you need to learn to ask a question.
And you need to be very curious, you know, the curious mind, no matter whether you're a cleaner or whether you're an engineer or whether you're an AI data scientist or a painter, but the curiousness, that's very important, because that leads you to go over the edge, to discover other barriers you want to pass. And then you find new solutions. And then you can have data lakes full of information, of pre-processed knowledge. But often, 99% of it you can't use. It is just a step towards.
But don't you think that we talk about a little bit about this topic, and you say you have to smart answers, smart questions. Most people, first of all, cannot do that.
Yeah.
And most people are not used to that anymore.
Yeah.
So they read news like it is true.
Yeah.
They watch the news like everything that they see is true.
Yeah.
So we are not being trained anymore. Is that?
I think that's a right observation, Lane, because it is a kind of instant reward we want if we give our time to read something. Oh, then that is true. No, then it should work as an activator for your mind and ask you the question, is that right? And then you have the mindset of the investigator.
And is that in your company, Frank, if you talk about information, misinformation, about cleaning, about your whole, is that something that you see in your segment?
Yeah, for sure. I like the word that we are being Sherlock Holmes. Not we need to be back Sherlock Holmes. Let's say that's the investigator, so to speak, or Columbo. Let's say from my young time. But yes, I think let's say you should not believe everything which is given to you, and you should investigate left and right next to it. Let's say to make sure that you calibrate the answer or you calibrate your information. I think that is the most important thing nowadays to do that, because you do not know where people have got the information which they give to you, so you do not know the source, let's say, where it came from. And if it doesn't came from the original source, it's minked information, as we call it. And this is what the tricky situation is, let's say, no matter what you do. And we always try to go back to the source, or we like to find out what is the validation of the information.
A concept we use very often is reflection in action. So it is important whether you are in an innovation team or in a sustainability challenge, or you develop a new business idea, to reflect in action. And that means that someone has to say, let's stop now. What did we do? How did we come there? What did we miss? What else should we do? How can we go forward? And that reflection in action is extremely important to sharpen the mind, but also not to fall in the trap of the obvious. Yeah, but we very often saw, you said Sherlock Holmes, but very often we saw that misunderstandings very often come that people just follow one direction, where there could have been other directions if you have your mind wide open.
Yeah, and that is it is also leading me to the topic of sharing experience and sharing knowledge. That is so important for companies. You're in 80 countries. All those partners of you have all kinds of. How do you? Because that is one of your expertise areas, eh?
Yeah.
Sharing. Yeah. Experience, sharing knowledge.
Yeah, diffusion of knowledge, as we call it in academic terms, but sharing of knowledge, the diffusion of it, so that other companies, other people can make use of it, is not starting at the moment when you say, well, here you have an IMOP, and now we look at all the elements and all the components. But when you say what it can do, and that means that diffusion starts when you give something a meaning. And the meaning is something leaders should give words to. And that is also something, you know, that is part of a dream, but also part of a vision, part of a mission. And then that one company brings the most advanced cleaning equipment, but the other perhaps the most advanced agriculture equipment. That's fine, but it has a meaning in a broader sense, and that is something you have to convey. And I think then the diffusion of knowledge starts.
It really helped us when we started to create these, what I call my jury members. I call them like that, my icons: faster, cleaner, greener, safer, and better. Yeah. And if you define them, what is it? Let's say it's much easier already to see where in which box it sits in, and why you call this faster, or why you call this greener, or why you call this cleaner. Let's say, because then you come to the why, and you come to the. Before, I would say 8 years ago, we didn't have it.
But Frans, here you say something very important, because here you say that the other can give words to the why, the question you pose. So the other gives his or her own words, so then that knowledge is embedded, comes from someone else, not just from a textbook.
But how do you spread that then, Frank? Because I hear what Annemieke is saying, but Frank, how do you then spread that? Is there a platform? Is there a...
It's not yet a platform for it. It's more used, I would say, in our internal organization. So it starts somewhere, somehow, let's say, but at least those words, let's say, are common language to our people. If you would wake them at night at 3 o'clock in the morning, they will say you those words if you would ask them that. And they know the meaning for it, and they know also how to ask that to somebody else. And then in how it spread further in all the conversations we have with people here, we use those words in those conversations. And then we can load I can say, Lean, what do you mean about that? And then you could say, I interpret it as like this, or I say it like this, or I do it like that, whatever it comes from. So then you get a kind of an AI.
But that is an individual.
Yeah, but that's a kind of a data bank, right? Because now I get your answer, and I get Annemiek's answer, and I get the other answer. And on this way, if you collect all those answers, you enrich your own information.
So how do you, Annemieke, look at, because it is one of the most difficult topics. I've ran big international companies like Origin, and it's always so difficult to share.
Yeah.
And to because you can say, well, it's in a database. Okay, it's in a database. So what?
Yeah, but
so how do you?
That's not sharing.
Yeah,
A database is not sharing.
No. A database is much more like a closed treasure. No one uses it. But when you act in companies, then very often we talk about formal knowledge in a functional setting. And what I discovered in the past decades is that's nice. Then we can talk about a product or about a process in a very functional way, and we have the Excel sheet next to it, and we can, okay. No, what's more important is to understand the real knowledge that people do not convey. And if I may, but that is exactly the basis of what Josien and I are doing with Become Friends. We want to unleash that other layer of knowledge. And that is about what people learned in their youth, in the communities, in their free time, with friends, with other colleagues. But what is not in the textbooks, and what is not in the business books, and what is not in the Excel sheets, but that it is the luggage every leader needs to bring his or her people further, but also the companies, and to do good. And that is what the Japanese coined it as tacit knowledge, and that is what we convey. But tacit knowledge is very personal. So Frans has many layers, yeah? And it's very interesting to see those layers. But if we do that in a setting with more people, then you immediately experience something that goes beyond what we do, what we call knowledge.
And
it is
Frank, what I would like to see, we are listening now to Annemieke. Annemieke is I would say one of your backgrounds is not backgrounds, professions is academic.
Yeah, I think again, as I already have said, we are using let's say these kind of elements also to become a better company and to make what I call a better concept or a better product. And at the end of the day, you need a certain way of doing that. Otherwise, you cannot predict success. A certain way of predictability is that you have a certain way of doing it, because that leads to a certain outcome. Yeah. And therefore, let's say we can say now, if you start to master it and you know how to do that, and people in your team know how to do it, you get a much better end result. And if it would be all ad hoc, and you would do it on your way, and I would do it on my way, and somebody else would do it on his way, at the end you do not get this cohesion in it. And now, let's say we have a kind of a cohesion as a company, but we didn't start like that. We are driving it towards that direction, and that helps you by getting what we call faster in making what we call a product coming out to the market.
And now I would like to bring that to a next level, and that is we spoke about our intrinsic drive to making the world a better place. Yeah. And how could this discussion that we just had, experience, knowledge, help us, or maybe convince other companies to become also towards their future, to make a better future,
I think
a
it's
more
very simple,
sustainable future?
They will make, if they do a certain kind of way, they will make less what's called mistakes, what's called less waste of energy, less waste of materials, less waste of
Yeah,
that.
but then, Frank, everybody should do that. But
Yeah,
why
but I
don't
think
they?
at the end everybody should do it. Yes.
But why don't they?
That's a good question because they don't know it. So then you come to sharing, and sharing is caring.
Yeah,
Is that the circle?
well, I think that we are still in the textbook mode of leadership, if I may say so. That also when you look at business schools all over the world, we see more or less the same kind of textbooks and the same kind of heroes and the same kind of egos. And that's bullshit, because people are different. And real leaders do not resemble those people in the books. I think you're a very good example of that. You would never end up in such a book because you're so different. But what makes it so interesting if you unleash, let's say, in a personal way with other people together, that tacit knowledge, is that you open your mind also for a new dimension, which is so important nowadays, and that is diversity and inclusion. We work in a global world, and in that global world is a world of talent. I'm also a non-executive of Randstad, and if we would not acknowledge that talent has many faces and voices and attitudes, then you cannot survive as a company. But in every company, in every organization, we could do much more with that.
Why don't they?
Because we are very much, I would say, we are prisoners of our own mind and what we perceive as the right thing to do.
But Annemieke, can we also not have a conclusion that we talked about education earlier, that the education, as you just said yourself, the textbooks are all the same, more or less, so we don't train people from a young age to learn that basically. And you said that too, Frank. Isn't it one of your goals to start training young kids?
Yes, it's
making cleaning sexy.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the tasks we have. Let's say we do programs. Let's say the cleaning heroes, and we follow the cleaners with videos, so they get movie stars. So that's one of the things we do. We have Captains of Cleaning, which is a kind of a TV program where the people from the cleaning industry talk with each other, because that's also a secret. Not people do not talk and share with each other, and we between in that program we give them the table to talk with each other without being on that table, let's say. So we are not being what I call the ghost hanging around the table, but all these kind of elements are there, let's say, to see that, say, okay, Lane is not my enemy, Lane is my friend, let's say, because he can give me certain things which I didn't know before. And I think we have to go much more in that direction, as looking as and a lot of people coming to answer you, a lot of people are thinking still in silos. So
and are not being trained.
Trained. Yeah, but I mean, when we go back to your own childhood, then you were playing all the time and combining all kind of toys together and making something out of it. You know, that's something you unlearn when you study or when you go to school. The good thing about tacit knowledge is that you do that. You open that box again, but then with experiences. And partly those are experiences of the past, but also of what you currently do, but also what you're not conscious of, that it is a gift you have.
I'm listening to you, and I get inspired by this, and then I think, why does it not happen? So what are the challenges that you face because you're sitting here now? We talk to a relative, 10,000 of people, but it's still small. How can we pass this along, Annemieke?
You should know the answer yourself, because at the end, let's say, it's a change, and the change is the most difficult thing for a human being there is. So if you have done many years on a certain way, it's now you can say it's now. I hear this now, so it's easy to do that. But it means a change, and the change implementation and managing that is not so easy as it sounds. So that's number one of your obstacle you have. Number two is is it universal? So what I do, and if you would copy that to another industry, is it going to work there? Yes or no? That's another question, let's say. So you have to have a lot of fundamental know-how around it in your so-called Pandora boxes. Let's say, if you can say, can I take this out of the box and put it into my box? And then you need some guidance about it, let's say, and some questions about it. Let's say validation, I call it in my language, if you could do that.
And I think we developed this also in a setting with your organization and with Nijrode to become friends and to see how very experienced and very forward working leaders were surprised about all those layers they had as well, and that they had never shared it with the others. And that was, in fact, the start of lively conversations, of working visits, of saying much more to each other, because there was trust. And I think in the current world of business, there is not that much trust. Therefore, we do not share that much. But when we discover those other layers, then also as businesses we flourish much more, because we can share many more things without knowing the exact patterns of all the cleaning material around us. I don't need to know it, but I need to know the spirit where it comes from. And then you get inspired, and then other people want to work with you, for you, and then you can grow business.
That brings me to the last topic, and that is, because this is a program that talks about business as a force for good. So, meaning, how can we create a better world? How could this help? Maybe you can both give your brief view. How could tacit knowledge is important knowledge, is fundamental, as you say. So how could that help us to create a better world?
Yeah, but I think because it is the fundamental for making breakthrough innovations, not only in terms of products and processes, but also in our behavior, in our attitude. And I think leaders have an extremely important role in showing the courage to do that. And also to say, okay, perhaps I make myself a bit more vulnerable than I was used to, but I see that the power of becoming networked, connected to the other and understand the other, that is in fact the
But you have to be
business.
courageous, Annemieke, to do that. You have to be a courageous.
Yes.
So how do you see that, Frank? Are you a courageous leader, you think?
I think I am, let's say, but
I think so too, Frank.
Yeah, okay, but I think that there is a really big element which you just mentioned, is the so-called world trust and the trust barriers, and we need to think about these should not be there, because it's exactly as Annemieke says, as long as you do not give the bank account with the PIN code to somebody, let's say, you can basically at the end trust them not, because what can they do with it? At least they can learn from it, let's say, and if they learn from it and get better, maybe you can learn from it. So it's a kind of what I call a give and a take situation, and I think again a lot of people were brought up in silos, and that's why they're not looking left and right anymore. And I think one of the things we should give to our youth, let's say, if we have a chance, and that's where we need to start, is that they should not think in silos.
Yeah, and I think that the majority of the issues that are relevant for business are beyond competition. Had nothing to do with competitiveness.
No, and that is a good ending, Annemieke.
Thank you.
And that, because it's beyond competition, that is what I like, and that is what I think is much more important nowadays, because then people start to talk more to each other, start to share patents, start to share other kind of stuff.
Yes, he didn't say share patents, as he said, okay, I do not care too much what the patent is. It's
but many companies are now sharing patents and opening it up.
That depends a little bit there. We have a different thinking about, let's say, at the end of the day, let's say if you have a patent, sometimes you had to work very hard to create that idea, and you didn't get the money back out of your investment, let's say, right away.
But that's a whole different topic.
Yeah,
the
I get it.
World. So that is, because I want to thank you both for being here in this frank and open discussion that we have had about the topic of tacit knowledge, which is a word that now is in everybody's mind who watches this episode and this business dialogue. And I want to thank you all for watching again to the Business Dialogue produced by and for good leaders. And every month we cover a critical business issue that is essential to make your company sustainable or give your company a better future. So be inspired.